computer's going to come up. Diane's presentation is going to be right there. Oh, there it is. Unbelievable.
Thank you.
Bill, are you going to introduce your wife?
I'd be honored.
Okay. This is Bill Davis, former
Brownie
regional
points.
director.
Regional, yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. We're Bill and Diane Davis. I worked for Mass Wildlife for 37 years and worked on the bald eagle restoration project since its inception in 1982 up until I retired in 2018. Diane worked on the project beginning in 1985. That's where we met. There's a little bit of history after that we'll get into later. With us on eagles through her various affiliations. Diane has had so many different and interesting wildlife experiences that she wrote a book about them. And one of the featured parts was her summer living at Quabin in 1985, raising 8 baby bald eagles that were brought from wild nests in Nova Scotia and placed in artificial nests overlooking the Quabin. And the segue from chestnuts to eagles is the fact that one of the most important things we can do for conservation is protect open space. And then one of the next most important things we can do is manage that open space for diversity of our wildlife and plant communities. And Mass Wildlife has protected more than 200,000 acres of open space here in Massachusetts. And what would it be like if American chestnut could be restored on that landscape scale? Brad did a really great job showing all the species that would benefit from that, from the smallest mammals to the largest mammals like the deer and the bear and the moose. So I'm happy to be affiliated with the Chestnut Foundation. Started my affiliation while I was working and continue it now in a volunteer basis. And I'd like Diane to share some of her experiences. She's a great educator. She's very inspirational. I'm going to kind of hang around up here a little bit and
Give me trouble.
keep us online. Sometimes she takes a shot at me here and there. I want to be able to defend myself. So someone that really knows an awful lot about wildlife, animals, behavior, my wife, Diane Davis.
Thank you. You want me to move this over a little bit?
You're fine.
You all set? Well, I started writing this book 27 years ago. It took 27 years to write this book. When I was young, probably about 8 years old and on, I had rabbit, guinea pig, hamster, mice, rats, and then all of a sudden one day I was on my paper route at 11 and heard squeak, squeak, squeak behind me, and there was a baby squirrel at the bottom of a telephone pole. And of course I picked it up, and it was like, this is not like a pet. And here comes the mother right down the tree, like, give it back. And I went, oh, do you want it? Here. And of course she didn't come back down, so I had to take it home. Well, that started me in wildlife. I was working with domestic a lot, and now I'm starting with wildlife. And so the book is about the Eagle Project, and it's all about from beginning to end as far as what I've been doing all my life. And I want to start off at the Worcester Science Center, that is now the Ecotarium. Back in 1971, I started there as a volunteer at 17, working with the wildlife. And my husband, Paul, he was a zookeeper along with me, and we raised all kinds of animals, zoo animals, and then a lot of people were bringing in animals because there were no rehabilitation areas back in the 70s to take injured or orphaned animals. So we raised squirrels and rabbits and raccoons and woodchucks and things like that. And then one day our polar bear had a baby, 2 babies, and the second day she decided to take the first baby and bring it out from the den into the exhibit and try to bury it in the leaves. And we're going, what is going on? And then it started screaming. It's only this, a baby polar bear is this big. That's it. Eyes closed, ears sealed, just a little bit of fur over black skin. And as you can see. And they're 2 days old. And all of a sudden she took it out of the leaves and she went over and she dunked it in the cold water because it was December 10th. And we're going, oh my, what is going on? And it started screaming. And she was holding by its little paw. It was upside down. She was holding by, walking around with it. And then she tried to push it in the corner, and then she got a little rough with it, so we decided we've got to get the other one before she takes that one out and does the same thing. We were able to get the first one that she was trying to bury and get rid of, and it did die after its second day, and the necropsy revealed that it had a ruptured duodenum. Something was wrong with it. She knew it, and she was trying to get rid of it so she could, but it kept screaming, so her instinct kept saying, I need to come back and take this thing in. So we raised the first polar bear, and that's her, I don't know how, about a month later, and she's 2 months old at that point. And while we were working at the zoo, we started going and doing other things, and we started doing programs around Worcester County, my husband and I, and that's a 10-foot boa named Baby Bertha. And we used to do Boy Scouts at night after getting out of work during the day at the Worcester Science Center. We started It's an Animal's World and did programs with a skunk and different kind of turtles and snakes and a possum and snakes like Bertha and the little screech owl. Can you see the little screech owl on top of it up there? Yep. So we had all different animals that we would use to bring to people just to show them wildlife and try to protect it. We also became, after we left the Ecotarium, we were doing more programs, and then we became rehabilitators because that was the next step. There weren't very few rehabilitators, and it wasn't really licensed back then. They were just getting the licenses started. And so we were doing, this is a broadwing hawk, an adult broadwing hawk, that came in and had a torn crop. And so we had it stitched up by a veterinarian, and then we had to just give little pieces of kidney so it would go down easy and not cause any more damage to the crop. Crop is where they keep the food before it goes down into the rest of the body in the stomach. I also became the first licensed falconer in 1978, I believe. Now, this bird's name is Habiba. Now, anytime I start talking about Habiba and I did this, people say, you've got a beaver? Because they hear my Worcester accent. So it's actually, Habiba means sweetheart in Arabic. And when I became a falconer, my sponsor, you have to have a sponsor, you have to take a test, you've got to get a license federally and state. And so my sponsor had an extra red-tailed hawk. This bird was found as a little baby, brought to a nature center in the western part of the state, and hand-fed. Have you ever heard about imprinting? Yeah. So this bird was starting to focus when it was that small, and what did it see? A human being feeding it. So as it was growing, it thought it was a little human being, not a hawk. And so when it was put into a cage with another, and because they were feeding it and it really wanted to be near people, they said, we can't let it go, so they put it in the cage with another hawk instead of releasing it, and it killed the other hawk. It was in its territory and it didn't know what it was because she's a human. She's not a red-tailed hawk because she was raised by people. So, I had her 1 year, and she's got little bells on so I can hear her, and I just let her go, and she just goes into the tree, and I just start walking and hitting brush to see if there's any rabbits or small prey like voles that she can go after. Well, the next spring, all of a sudden I went into the mews, that's what it's called, where you keep the bird. And she was on her perch and she looked at me and she flew down to the corner and went like this. And I'm going, what is going on? And so I went near her and she just flattened herself like a pancake. So I said, well, I've been watching Marlon Perkins for a long time. And she looks like she wants to mate with me. So I put my hand on her back and her tail went. So I put my hand underneath and she got up, preened herself, got up on the perch and everything was fine. So I said, let's see what happens if I give her sticks. Well, she built a big nest and she's very good at it. Making here, 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 and then there, there, there. And everything was just kind of at a standstill. Well, then I gave her some greens and she laid an egg. And this is the splotch one. Every time a red-tail lays an egg, the first one is splotched. And 2 days later, she laid another one, which is a pale green. And so they're not fertile, right? Because So she, she would sit on them and then the next year, and the next year. So the third year, I talked to a falconer friend of mine, and he said, why don't you give her a chicken egg, see if she can hatch something. If she can do that, maybe she can be used to, hatch peregrine falcon eggs or something. So I gave her a chicken egg, but it never hatched. And I said, so I called him up at the end of that spring, and I said to Tom Riccardi, I said, I gave her the chicken egg, but it didn't hatch. And he goes, well, are you sitting on it 40% of the time? And I said, what? Well, the female sits on the egg 60% of the time, and the male sits on it 40% of the time. And you take doing your turn with the eggs. And I went, well, no. He said, well, that's why it didn't hatch. So the next year comes. I get a chicken egg. I give it, she lays her eggs. I take them out. I give her a chicken egg. She's sitting there. She's sitting on them dutifully. When she got off, when I would come, I'd give her her food. She would go take a bath, breathe a little bit, eat her food, and then go back on the nest. Well, in that time, I had the egg in my pocket with a hot water bottle, keeping it warm for the 40% of the time, and it hatched. And there it is. So that's a little chicken. And so, the problem was, even though Habiba was imprinted on people, she still had the instincts to know what she was supposed to do, and that was to raise this baby. Now, the chicken, it has instincts. Even though it's getting imprinted on a heart, it still knows that I'm supposed to be going down for scratch, chicken scratch, corn and things like that, to eat. Habiba, not a beaver, Habiba, she was feeding the top of its head because a baby hawk is supposed to be looking up and get fed like this. So she kept feeding the back of its head. And she's actually feeding it a day-old chick. And there's the beak in her mouth, and she's feeding it to the chick. And it was like, she's not getting this, and I'm getting a little worried. Well, the chick grew up, and that's a male rooster. And when I would give Habiba some mice, she would hand it over to the rooster, or the rooster would take it out of her mouth and fly to the corner and tear it apart and eat everything, including the tail of the mouse. So even though it was a chicken, it knew what to do as far as survival, and that's to eat whatever mom gives me, and that's what she was doing. Well, one year, I got Fish and Wildlife called and said, you've got a red tail, right? And I said, yep, for falconry. And they said, well, we have these two little red-tailed hawk chicks. They're 21 days old. Well, I realized they were 21 days old. And is there anything your hawk can do? So I gave the chicks to her, and she immediately looked at them and tried to get them out of her nest because, she didn't hatch them. She was on eggs. But I took the eggs away, and I had broken shells, and I put them around the chicks. But anyway, she went after them. Well, I'm thinking, okay, we're at a standstill. She wants to get those out of her nest. And so what I did was I fed Habiba, and then I fed the chick. And then I fed Habiba, and I fed the chick. And then Habiba snatched a piece out of my mouth, out of my hands of meat, and the chick grabbed it right out of her mouth. And that's the picture Bill Byrne took of the chick. And from that point on, she was all of a sudden very careful where she was stepping. She didn't want to hurt them at all, and she took care of them and raised them till they were 6 weeks of age. One was a male and one was a female. I gave the food to Habiba on the side. She would feed them, so the chicks imprinted on a red tail, so they knew they were red-tailed hawks. And then we were able to, Bill Byrne found the nest, 495 and Route 9, right in that clover leaf, was a nest with one chick in it. And this is the wild chick, about 6 weeks of age. And so he's kind of looking at Billy Byrne as, what are you doing here? And we plopped one chick in one day and the next day we put another chick in. And the mother came back and was fed them because I waited and I'm thinking, I don't hear the parents, I don't hear the parents. And then all of a sudden we heard the parents and we got out of there. So she raised her chick and the other two chicks. The mother's not saying, well, let's see, yesterday I had one, now I've got 3. As long as they food beg, she'll feed them. And look how camouflaged, I know this is the black and white picture, this was in the Boston Globe, but look how camouflaged they are along with the nest and the light coming through the trees. It's unbelievable what nature does. So, Jack Swedberg from Mass Fish and Wildlife asked me, because I was a falconer and a rehabilitator, he asked me, and he knew me, would you like to raise eagles at Quabin and live by yourself for a whole summer in a tent raising and feeding these eaglets fish that you're going to catch for the whole summer. And I went, yes, I'd love to. Well, this Jack Swedberg, he just passed away last year along with Bill Byrne, which was sad, but they were a big part of the program. And so when Jack, here the getting off the plane from Nova Scotia, each one has this 8 chicks in 8 boxes. And so I went, before we saw this was when we got the chicks, but a month before I said, I went home and I said to Paul, my husband, I have a chance to live at Quabin by myself for a whole summer raising 8 baby eagles. They'll be 6 weeks of age when we get them from Nova Scotia. And I'll raise them for the summer, and then we'll let them go in the fall with telemetry on their tail. And my husband said, that's a great idea. He actually worked on the Plymouth Red-bellied Turtle Project. It was, I don't know what it's called now, the Cooter, but back then in the 80s it was the Plymouth Red-bellied Turtle. And he lived this summer at Crooked Pond with the turtles and mapping them and finding out where they are and notching them and stuff. So he said, this is your turn. This is your opportunity. I said, you don't mind? I'm going to be gone the whole summer. The whole summer? That's great. So I lived in a tent, and this is the tower, and you want to say something about the tower?
I just need to interject, and here's another chestnut connection. Our friend right here, Rufin Van Bossett, those of you that are chestnut enthusiasts know Rufin well. Those of you who don't, Rufin was the system arborist for Massachusetts Electric Company when we started the Eagle Project. I had met him the year before in 1981, and he helped us get started on osprey restoration by helping us salvage utility poles, cross arms, and hardware to put up osprey nesting structures along the coast because the numbers of that bird were critically low. So we make a call to Rufin, and next thing we know, we've got donated utility poles, everything we need, manpower to assist to build this nice 30-foot tower overlooking the Quabin, where we would release 41 bald eagles from 1982 through 1988. So thank you very much, Rufin.
But there's one more thing about that. You couldn't get the trucks down to the point where you needed to put the tower up, so what did you guys do?
Rufin got a crew of old, experienced linemen, and we used pick poles to get the poles upright, these long pointed sticks balanced over the holes that we had dug, and then they got them all aligned perfectly, and we got everything tied together. So his connections and the experience of his crew got us off the ground.
Yep. So this is the 30-foot tower, and Jack Swedberg told me every night, make sure you pull on this rope that will be over here to make sure the ladder gets away, and they have flashing guard. You can't really see it right here. So raccoons couldn't get up and get to the chicks. And he said, I'd hate to come here one day while you're working on the project and find one of the chicks gone because a raccoon got up there. So I had to pull the ladder. And then whoever bought the book, you'll see what happens the first morning. I had to try to get that ladder back in position on the tower. It almost went off. And here I am thinking the eagles are up there and they can't get any food or anything. And this is my first day. So it was challenging. So these are the chicks. They're 6 weeks old. They were with their parents for the first 6 weeks of their life, seeing a mother and father with white head and white tail and a black body. And they were bringing fish into them, and they were imprinting on their parents, because it usually happens right at the beginning of their life. What we did was we brought them in here, put 2 in each cage. There were 4 cages, so that way they could have room, and we made them an artificial nest, and put them in there so that way they could now see the stars and the moon and everything down in Massachusetts. And hopefully in 5 years when they become adults, they'll come back to Massachusetts, not fly up to Nova Scotia. So that was the whole deal of what we were trying to do.
And one important fact is that we only took birds from multiple chick wild nests. We never cleaned out a nest. There had to be 2 or 3 chicks. We take the runt and give that remaining chick a better chance of survival that wouldn't have any competition.
Yep. So, and this is as they were growing, they're probably about 8 weeks now, and you can see that they're getting more looking like a bald eagle standing up, because in the beginning, all they could do was walk around on their elbows, clomp, 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 clomp. And so, again, they were watching the sun come up, the sunset, and the stars and so forth. and it was wonderful. At 12 weeks of age, what we did was we would now go in there and grab these eagles with our hands. Nowadays, I use a sheet to get over them. But back then, we were walking into these two birds flying around because they didn't see us all that time. We were feeding them remotely by dropping fish through a hatch on the top. So they did, and we were looking at them through what is called one-way glass, so they couldn't ever see us. So they saw me when I was out fishing, catching fish in nets. But other than that, we didn't have any contact until the day we had to catch them and put a transmitter on them. This is Ernie, and that's Bert, and this is the transmitter with a long antenna that goes down the tail, and in the next spring, it will fall off when it molts, because it molts all its feathers and replaces them with new ones. So this is a 6.5-foot wingspan at 11 weeks of age. So they're full size at 11 weeks of age. They even say they're a little bit bigger, wing loading, because they are juveniles, it's a little bit more millimeters on each end of the feathers, makes it so they can try to get through their first year okay. So we released them, and they did pretty good. I think 2 fell in the water over how many years that did the project.
Yeah, out of 41 birds released, 2 ended up in the drink. They float like corks. We go out in a little boat, scoop them up, put them back on the tower, let them collect themselves, give them another chance. The other problem that we had, they were very good flyers, but they had never learned how to land. So they go flying out of the cage, oh, isn't this magnificent, soar down the shoreline, pick a branch in a big white pine along the shoreline, fly in, grab onto it, and just pitch right forward and hang upside down like a giant fruit bat till they figured out how to right themselves. So, you know, they're a very majestic symbol, but they're really clumsy when they're babies.
So this is Ernie out on his own for the very first time. They exercised every day as they got their wings in, and so that their muscles were good. So when they did take that first flight, they really flew well. So now my job was, the eagles were out on their own. My job now is to, this receiver has 8 different channels for the 8 different birds. So if I saw a bird in number 4, I called them all by numbers because I didn't have a college education. And so I kind of felt like I'm not a biologist. So I'm going to be like a biologist. I'm going to name them 1 through 8. Not Bert and Ernie. And what are the other birds? There was Dick and Jane after my mom, because they were Dick and Jane. I named them when I wrote the book. Somebody said, you gotta give them names. I said, I gave them numbers because I was a scientist. They said, you gotta give them names. So Bert and Ernie, Woodstock and Snoopy, Dick and Jane, and Marjorie and Attila. So that's how I named them. But back then I was 1 through 8. And if I saw a number, Marjorie, she had 2 tail feathers missing, so when I saw the 2 tail miss, I would go right to number 4, and there's the bing, 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 so I'd know who it was. Because if they said, you're going to have to go out and find them every day and figure out if they're doing okay, they came back on an island right in front, called Loon Island, right in front of the tower, every day at 6 in the morning and at 3 in the afternoon. Clockwork to get the food that I had left the night before, so they wouldn't see that I was giving the food. I'd put it out at dark, and then the next morning at 6 o'clock, they'd go to the island and feed. Always fighting. No 2 were sat next to each other and said, F you. It was always fighting, bickering, and I'm thinking, what is going on here? Oh, and this was my last week that I was staying there. Now I'm going home for the week, and only going a couple times a week to check on the channels. And Billy Byrne and Jack Swedberg were taking days just to go down there to check on the telemetry to see where they were. So when I went home, my husband asked me for a divorce. Why did he want me? You're not going to be here the whole summer? Oh, that's great! Isn't that wonderful? Well, he fell in love with somebody that he was falling in love with years earlier, and they actually got married 3 months later. So, this is my ex-husband.
I might have, instead of a baby turkey vulture, I might have picked a shrew, but this is a stunning likeness of her.
So when I finished that, Tufts was coming about once a month to the project just to see how the birds were doing. And I would take I had a scale in each cage, so they'd step on a perch, it was a scale, and I could tell how much they weighed to make sure that they were gaining weight. So Tufts asked me to come to the work for them, and I said, I have a high school education. I was going to Colorado State, but I decided to stay with the zoo. And they said, well, and I go, I don't know how to do x-rays or blood work, and they said, well, we can teach you that. That's the easy stuff. It's you being able to go into a cage and catching an eagle or working with a moose or a bear or a deer. And we'll teach you how to x-ray, but you're the one that knows how to get them down and be able to work with them, and the birds of prey especially. And the other thing is, we have to give them meds every day, twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day. And the problem is, you try to feed them, and you can't get the food in because they're not eating the food. So I did different things to get birds to eat, like accipiters, the sharp-shinned coopers or a goshawk. They like birds. They don't want to eat mice and rabbits as much as birds. So what you have to do is take a dead mouse or a rat, thaw it out, slit the stomach, take a quail, pluck the feathers off the quail, stick them in the mouse, and then get in front of the bird and start plucking it, and the feathers. And when the feathers go like this, he gets all excited and he grabs the mouse, which he thinks is a bird, and starts eating. And then you can get the food, put the bills in the mouse, and that's how you get him to eat. So it was things like that. That's why they wanted me. They didn't want my academic skills. They wanted to be able to get a bird out or an animal out of a cage. So these are the 4th-year vet students. They go through 2-week rotations through dogs, cats, horses, cows, sheep, different exotic animals. But when they come to the wildlife clinic, I have to divide up the cases, okay? So there's 3 students, okay? You're getting an eagle, you're getting an eagle, and you're getting a golden eagle. You're getting a red-tailed hawk, you're getting a red-tailed hawk, and you're getting a sharp-shinned hawk. You're getting a great horned, you're getting a screech owl, and you're getting a snowy owl. So, and they're like, yes, but how do I get them out of the cage? We'll show you. So this is a peregrine falcon that had is an endangered species, and this is one of the adults that nested in Boston, and it was had pneumonia. So we had to keep clearing the glottis out to make sure that she could breathe. And we put hoods on like this because we want them to be calm. And if they can't see you, they just kind of sit there or put their head down. But if they see you, they're like this. And I'll show you a picture of an eagle doing that. So that was my job, is to teach them how to work with the wildlife. And I just saw someone in the audience. Maybe no, you look like someone I know. No, she's saying no, no. I was going to say, I actually, she was a volunteer, a girl that looks just like you. And she volunteered at the wildlife clinic, and I actually had her work with the peregrine falcon that had long-term issues. And so she tamed it down enough just to be able to work with it and feed it what it needed to feed to get its medication. So this is what our breakfast. I teach the students, okay, first we're going to get some mice and rats and fish out, and we're going to feed all these animals. So this is for seeds like blue jays and things like that, and grain for the fish, for the geese and the ducks, and fish for the loons and the herons, rats for the eagles, and then something like this for a bobcat or fox, because you want to give a varied diet.
Just for the record, I do all the cooking at home.
He does. And so we're still both working with eagles, which is neat. He's worked with animals in the wild and I'm working with in captivity. So it was like, what did you do today? Well, I worked with an eagle. Actually, I worked with Ernie. Remember Ernie, the eagle that I showed you? Well, he got caught in a jump trap up in Maine. And so he was brought down to us. They said, tender loving care and he'll be fine. And in the meantime, I said, well, so what did you do today? Well, Billy, for the next 3 years, I did the Eagle Project in '85. He did in '86, '87, '88. And so it worked out great, and we would have interesting things to talk to with each other. Oh, and I wanted to tell you, let me go back for just a second. With a second marriage, and then we got married 6 years later, and with a second marriage comes a new mother-in-law. How's that?
That's why I'm up here, to defend my mother-in-law.
So, and also things like this. This was Lucy the moose was an orphan. Mother got hit by a car. Maine was going to use this moose to let it grow up and be comfortable around people so they could see what it eats in the summer, the winter, and the fall, and they would track what a moose was doing in the wild. But she broke her foot when she tripped over her water bowl. So that's why she was there with a broken leg. And then Billy was working with moose. Where did this moose come from?
Beautiful downtown Fitchburg, so we had to put a dart in her and get her up to Boylston and out of harm's way. And I've lost a little weight, but not that much. So.
I had to spread it out. And then here's a case where I hadn't worked with a porcupine before. So when I first started doing it, I didn't have enough ideas to figure out how do I x-ray this guy. So I put on a heavy coat, thank goodness, because he informed me that he really didn't want me x-raying him. But you know what I figured out? Give him a carrot and he'll do anything. So what we would do is we would x-ray him and see, you can put your hands, he's got 30,000 quills. And you can put your hands on as long as you're going this way, but you don't ever want to go that way. And they're not, you can't throw them. They just kind of, if it goes like that, then they stick in you, because they've got little microscopic barbs. So all we did was someone would give him a carrot, and the vet student could unwrap the bandage and put a new bandage on after they x-rayed it. It worked out great. I never said this before, but we had our first beaver. How do you get him to poop? He wouldn't go, because that's the student. They have to know they ate this much and they defecated this much and so forth, but this beaver would not poop. And one of the students said, why don't we put him in the bathtub on the 3rd floor? So we brought him all the way up on the 3rd floor, put him in the bathtub, and he pooped. But he also bit off the hoses to the tub. So now this is Ernie. So we're taking Ernie and we're deciding what are we going to do. This is the foot. It doesn't look healthy. And when they said, oh, it's just 10, 11 care, he'll be fine. That trap went right through his leg right up here. So this is dead. The sheath, this is supposed to be black. The sheath fell off. The skin is falling off. It's a mess. So we decided, okay, what are we going to do? Are we going to euthanize it? It is an endangered species. What else could we do? Well, we decided that bald eagles are scavengers. They mostly get their food from deer in the winter and go after fish. He could probably fish with one leg. So he had the band on from when he was at fishing, when we got the birds when they're 6 weeks of age. They had bands put on them so we knew which ones were which. And this is the leg where they cut the leg off and just the foot off, and the leg is healed. And we let him go back at Quabin and wish them good luck. Well, there's a lot of beautiful animals that you can take care of when you're in a wildlife clinic. We got 1,400 animals in a year at Tufts Wildlife Clinic. So there were a lot of cases. Now these are great, but they like to bite. Why? Because they live up in the Arctic. They nest on the ground. So when something comes lumbering along, it's going to get bit and it's going to go like this, whether it's a musk oxen or whatever is up there. And so they have a nasty bite. The other thing is, when you work with these guys, that's all lice up there. This is lice. Lice. When the eagles come in, they have mites. They're tiny, they look like pepper, but you can feel them. And I decided to go back to school nights to get my degree at Worcester State, so I had my daughter and I lived in Grafton, and I would go to school nights, and sometimes I'd be working on a snowy or a bald eagle during the day, and I just kind of go like this while I'm taking notes at Worcester State, and kind of making it not too suspicious that I'm itching all these mites. But we're humans, we're not warm enough. They want to be on a 104-degree temperature bird, so they get up to your head and they kind of just jump off, and then the next day you're fine. So. And then you get the angry owls. They're angry the minute you get them in. I hit a car, you can see his narrates is a little bit broken up, and the eye. So he was in with head trauma. They're nasty when you get them in. They don't like you looking at them, so we cover the head anytime we work with them, because they just don't like to look at you. And when you release them, they're still nasty. But we like great horned owls. And then you get something like this in. And as I said, each student gets a whole bunch of cases. So the next animal comes in might be a rabbit. Okay, Susan's going to get the rabbit. And all of a sudden the baby raccoon that's injured paw. Okay, George gets it. And there's only like 10% males in vet school anyway. So when you saw a male coming in, it's like, what are you? Because there's usually 92% female or vet students now. So I get that we get this little bird in. And so I said, okay, Chelsea, you're getting this bird. Now what's your plan? Because they're supposed to be thinking about, we get this animal and what am I going to do with it? And she goes, I'm going to cuddle it. I'm going to keep him warm. I'm going to feed him little tidbits of food, and he's just so cute. And I go, no. This is first of all, what is this?
Don't know.
Someone told me when I did the Grafton Senior last Wednesday, they said, it's the abominable snowman. But it's a little screech owl. Little tiny talons, this big, with a little egg tooth. See the egg tooth? So it's only 2 days old. So, because it falls off after a while. And its eyes are closed, and its ears are sealed. So they don't imprint on you then. They have to take it and open their eyes and get that visual. So we said, we have a man, Noam Smith from Audubon. He has a lot of screech owl boxes because they get a lot of birds like this in. And they put the boxes up in all areas that he knows, and then the screech owls gravitate to them. They have the young, and they take this one and just stick it into a box where a mother has 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 babies, and it's not going to imprint on people. So that's one way. Here's one where this is Archie the barred owl, lost the left eye, hearing damage in the left ear. So and it was raised by a family when they found it as a little baby, and it imprinted on him. So we can't release her. So she lived in the area where all the animals were. She had her own cage during the nighttime, but during the day, she would go out and sit on the perch in front of the window and just watch all the things going on with all the other animals.
Yeah, Archie would also greet people that were coming in the back door of the wildlife.
Yes! That was a long time ago, wasn't it? So what a great bird she was. And I used to do programs with her too, which was really good, because she was a good bird. Then you get something like this. Here's a peregrine falcon. They put them in Boston, they raised them, they grew up, they had babies.
Just like the eagles, they were raised in an artificial situation, but did not imprint on humans, and then they started to colonize urban areas. The Customs House in Boston was the first place they nested. This is the Monarch Place building in Springfield. It's why the Springfield minor league hockey team was named the Falcons, because they were formed just after these birds set up territory, and there was a closed circuit TV put on this nest on the 21st floor of the Monarch Place building.
Yep, so people are home eating breakfast, making pancakes for their kids, watching the Peregrine channel, because they were watching, what is the bird going to bring in today to their babies? Most of it was birds. You can see all feathers because they're chasing birds. And all of a sudden, they started getting calls to Mass Fish and Wildlife, and they started getting calls at the cable TV station. Our baby is sick. One is bright and alert and bopping around, and our other baby, he's sick. You've got to do something about it. So Tom French went over there. Now, if I was Tom French, this is the 21st floor. They didn't just cut the window, open it up, put a tray with rocks on, pebbles on it, because that's what they like to nest on. He climbed up to the, what floor?
24th, and had to rappel down the building like Batman 3 stories to get to that ledge to put that chick in a bag. I had him on the rope, on belay, and that's when I leaned over and said, Tom, how about that raise we've been talking about? Anything you want.
Yeah, but the peregrines, they knocked his helmet off, they knocked his glasses off, because they're very aggressive. Bald eagles, you'll see, they're not aggressive when you go to their nest. So, they got this baby, they brought it to Tufts. It was that night. I was at school, night school at Worcester State. I get a call. Dr. Sedgwick said, can you come to the clinic right now? It's 10 o'clock, okay. So, I don't know why I brought it so late, but anyway, Dr. Sedgwick examined the baby chick and found that it had a piece of meat with sinew wrapped around its tongue. So it couldn't swallow it, and it couldn't cough it up, so it was slowly dying. It couldn't eat, and so it was just withering away in the side, and the mother could just look at it. There was nothing she could do. And so Tom scaled down, got it, and brought it back. And so my job, so I said, well, what do you want me to do? You know, you fixed the problem. Tom says the animal is, the chick is just too weak. It's been 2 or 3 days since I could get there, and people started noticing there was something wrong. So they needed me to take it home and get food into it for another 2 or 3 days, and then they'll put a band on it, and then band the other chick when they put the chick back. So I'm saying, okay, so I brought him home, and Becky, my daughter, she was 4 or 5 at the time, and we're hand feeding it, because you just touched its beak. You really couldn't see. You could touch its beak, and then it would go to bite, and then you would put the food in its mouth, and then it got stronger and stronger, and then one day I was looking up at Becky, like the 3rd day, and it was going like this, looking at Becky, and looking at me, and I'm going, no, we're going to imprint this thing. So I took Becky's doll, an eagle doll. I took Billy's best white sock. I got my Peterson bird guide out, and I drew a picture of a peregrine mother on that. I thought that was a pretty, Billy's laughing too. I thought that was a pretty good job. And this was Dr. Sedgwick taking pictures. It kind of looked at it, and then looked at us. So we took another picture, like, you gotta be kidding. It's not gonna work on me.
And I looked for that sock for months.
So, all of a sudden it started peep, peep, peep within minutes. And what I did was, I took a quail, frozen quail, thawed it out, plucked all the feathers off it, put it in our blender at home, and that's what we fed it. Quail in a blender. So all I did was take the food, put it in my hand, and put it under the puppet like this. So it didn't see me, it only saw the mother in the food, and then after it would finish eating, it would crawl. I put the baby in the corner of its little box, and the chick would crawl right underneath and stay there, and I had a hot heating pad underneath to keep him warm. And then it was back to the, up into the, back wherever it is. Now, I was lucky, I was getting my degree, and also Dr. Sedgwick said, Diane, take all these, credits and get to be a certified wildlife veterinary technician. There's not many of wildlife veterinary technicians. So I was lucky enough to go back to the ecotarium where I worked, and the mountain lion I helped raise, as an adult, take care of. And so that was neat to go back there. The problem with this is, I said, Doc, do you think I could get a picture? Because he loved taking pictures of students and things. Could you take a picture? Because, I worked with this animal when I was 17 and 18 years old. He said, sure. So I went in there. I always cover the animal under anesthesia so you don't get any stimulus. So I took the sheet off, and I picked up the head, and he took a picture, and another one, and he said, Diane. I go, yeah. He goes, shh. Shh. I go, what? He goes, put the head down and put the cover over him. I go, what? Just do it. And the next day, he took the pictures to the wherever and got them developed, and he showed me that the first time he clicked, the eyes opened. And so he was stimulated, and he said, just put the head down and cover it over. So that was kind of neat. And remember Ursa Major? Okay, this is Ursa, and she had a toothache. And people say, well, how do you know? Well, she had a chipped tooth, so that's how we knew. And so I was able to be the veterinary technician with the students, giving the students, things that they were putting over the head and stuff like that. So they were learning, and of course they were so excited. I said, polar bear that they were working with. And so they fixed the tooth, had a root canal. Now, can you imagine that it was a human dentist? Meaning that it wasn't that the dentist was just human, but it worked on human patients. And here he is, this day, asked to work on a polar bear. Well, first, we have a client that we'd like you to work on. He's got a root canal. She has a chipped tooth. Oh, well, talk to my secretary and we'll schedule. No, you don't understand. It's a polar bear. Well, he was so excited, he said, I'll do it for free. So he did the root canal. Can you imagine the next day working on a human, saying, human? I worked on a polar bear yesterday. So they just love that stuff. And so then Billy and I were both done with the Eagle Project. The eagles were now going to have young for the first time since 1905. Bald eagles had not nested in Massachusetts since 1905.
And the first successful nest was in 1989 at Quabin, actually 2 pairs successful. One bird we released in 1982, paired with a bird Diane released in 1985. They built a nest on Russ Mountain at the north end of the Quabin. Another bird Diane released in 1985, paired with a male. They nested down near Quabin Park also in 1989. So 3 chicks produced in the wild from those 2 nests. Again, the first time in the wild since 1905.
So Billy and I decided, you know, we need to talk to kids. Adults too, but kids. And talk about, you know, show them the bald eagle, which Bullet, this is her name, his name is Bullet because he was shot through the shoulder in Hoona, Alaska. And so we said we need to talk about the environment, and really Billy always said at the very end, habitat is the key. Get these kids realizing that we need the habitat in order to work with these guys. Somebody was mentioning about we wanted to accelerate the chestnuts. We don't want to wait, we want it now. Well, it's the same with the bald eagle. They were endangered species. It might take, DDT and habitat loss were the 2 big factors. And so now that DDT was taken off, ospreys were starting to come back once you put up the poles, and eagles would eventually come back because they never were that low up in Maine. There were many nests up in Maine because they probably didn't have DDT sprayed up there. But anyway, so we used Bullet to do programs with, and so I started bringing them into classrooms in Grafton just to see how Bullet was going to do, and he was just as calm as could be, sitting on the glove. And then one day, it was Endangered Species Day at the State House. Now, you all recognize our next president, Bill Will. So Bill Will came in, Bullet was in a box. Billy was talking to the assistant governor, Lieutenant Governor. And so Bill Will came over, he's very tall, and he said, hi, is there anything you want me or not want me to do before all the press comes in with all the cameras? And I said, yes. And he kind of leaned down towards me, and I said, don't move. When I take the bird out, don't move. And so when the photographers came in, and as you can see, he was like this. And when Bullet all of a sudden looked at him, he never moved. His eyes went over like this and stared at Bullet and didn't until I took him and put him away. Did they not leave? He just kept his eyes. So when this was in the Boston Globe and the Herald, I said to Billy, what are you doing standing behind Bullet? I mean, it looks cool with the American flag, but what are you doing back there? So what did you tell me?
I was there to take a talon for the team if Bullet jumped off Diane's glove. It's a good way to keep your tetanus shots up there. You get grabbed by an eagle every once in a while.
Yeah, but you've been. So then Bill Byrne, the wildlife photographer, and Billy Davis, they started to, they made a blind, they put holes in the front, they put cans in there, empty cans, and then when they would go in this little teeny door, you know, you had to kind of crawl in like this. And then there was a table here, and a heater there, and a bed there, and where you would take the cans out, and then put the cameras in so the eagles didn't figure out what was going on. And you don't move a lot. Don't move a camera quickly. And so we would go there. I'd go there, you know, a couple times I went there, and it was really nice to be with them and see what happens. And normally, remember when I said with the babies, they really didn't get along. They're always fighting each other, so if it was scarce with food, the ones that were the fighters were going to survive. Well, that's what was going on. They would go down, and you know, the ravens are in there, the eagles are in there, a golden eagle would be there. They're all trying to go in after the deer meat from a roadkill. Well, do you guys recognize this one?
Oh, yeah.
Look at that.
Stumpy, yeah.
That. What did you say?
Stumpy.
Well.
So did a lot of other people, and she was offended then.
So there he is. And so Billy Byrne's taking pictures of him. He came every year for years,
Really?
just in February for a week, and then he'd be gone. And we wondered, where's Ernie? Where does he go every summer? Well, we found out that birding group up in New Hampshire would go to the Manchester dump, and there's Ernie watching the gulls. And if the gulls grabbed something and it was too heavy and they were kind of lanky trying to get away from the other gulls, I'm going after you. And so we'd go after, kill the gull and eat him. And they called him Stumpy. That's what his name was up in New Hampshire, Stumpy. We didn't find out for years that was going on. So, we just, you know, for a bunch of years, it was great that we found out. Then one year we got a call from L.L. Bean. They were working on cameras on some river.
They were doing a catalog shoot on the Kennebec River with their kayak merchandise.
Go ahead, you might as well.
And they saw this dog fight above them between two bald eagles. And they cartwheeled down together and smashed into the Kennebec River. One got up and was able to fly away. The other starts floating down the river. They kayaked over to it, grabbed it. It's our buddy Ernie, dead. After all that struggle to
7 years
survive,
though. He lived 7 years in the
he
wild.
was likely engaged in a territorial battle because he probably wanted to breed and was willing to fight for it, and it ended up killing him.
Yep, but we were just so happy that he lasted that long. So then, like I said, this is Ross. First year, Betsy and Ross. They named those first eagles.
Just for publicity.
Yeah, because that was the year of the bald eagle.
Bicentennial year of the bald eagle named as our national animal.
So there's Ross as a juvenile. First year bird, brown eyes, brown beak, brown body, for the most part, white, speckled. But every time a bird came down and ate, the next one wouldn't come down to another piece of food. They'd come down and tackle the first bird list. Then the third bird comes down and tackles who's left on the food. And that's all they do is fighting and screaming and yelling and feathers flying. And then all of a sudden we were there and a bird is sitting there next to the food. And Ross, see the blue? Ross comes in and he lights right next to the female. And it was like, hey, they're not fighting. Well, that was awesome, because next year they built a nest. So that's Marjorie. I, again, named them after when I made the book 27 years later, but that was number 4, Marjorie, and that's Ross. And so Ross is bringing some sticks over to the nest, and they had the first babies born in Massachusetts since 1905. So this was 1989. So the Eagle Project was officially done. They were going to raise eagles until they got a nest. And so 1989 was the first year they got a nest. So Billy and I worked at Tufts now. He worked at Fish and Wildlife. You can see this is a little baby. He's about a 4-week-old baby. But the legs, look at these legs. This is an adult. These are adults, but this is how big the baby's legs are at 6 weeks. Because at 6 weeks when we get them from Nova Scotia, they put the bands on right then. So that's pretty neat. So we don't just go there and do it. We've got an ambu bag, we've got medicine right here just in case something goes wrong. And then he bands them with 2 bands, okay, 1 on each leg. And so there's the chick with the legs. So we're going to pass this around. This is a female and this is a male. In birds of prey, the females are larger. So she might weigh 10 to 12 pounds and the male might weigh 7 to 9 pounds. So the males are smaller. Females probably larger because they're spending 60% of the time on the nest, that I found out. So pass this around. This is the state band, and this is the federal band, kind of like a Social Security without the benefits. So pass it around so you can see that. Here's an egg if you're really careful. Here's an egg, a bald eagle egg. Now, is it real? No. All these years, for the last 30 years, Billy and I can handle feathers, talons, dead bodies of bald eagles because we have permits. Him with Fish and Wildlife and me with the Eagle Tufts. And so, but now, the minute we retired, I gave everything back and I got a fake egg and a fake talons because it's a $2,000 fine or a year in jail for possession of any part of a bald eagle because it's an endangered species. Here's the skull. So that big, huge bird, and that's, again, this is not real, so you can hold it. So this is why we banned them. So people love to film eagles all over the state and all over the country. And so when those good long lens, they get this one, you'll see it's a 7 or a 9-digit number. 8, okay. But this one, it says W23. So you can read that, and it's W23, W23, W23. So you can read that, so they will call and tell Fish and Wildlife, or Billy when he was the Eagle Project Director, that this bird was seen in this area, and Billy can go back through the file on the computer and say, this bird was a baby in a nest in Quabin, and now he's up on the Merrimack River. So someone calls from West Virginia and says, we have a bald eagle that's injured or dead or whatever, and it's got this band number. He knows what nest it came out of and so forth and so on. So it does help with information on longevity too. The bald eagle at the ecotarium that I worked with, they were not Betsy and Ross, Liberty and Justice, Mr. and Mrs. Farrell. The female was 27 when she passed away a couple of years ago, but the male was 42. So they usually live about 25 to 30, but he was 42 years old. His body just wore out. Even the baby eagles, this is probably a 13-week-old baby eagle now on its own, likes the information. What is this?
Around every active nest, we posted an area as a wildlife zone to keep people out so they wouldn't inadvertently love the birds to death, trying to get too close. So this is a picture of a newly fledged chick, obviously appreciating the fact we created that buffer zone because he's perching on the no trespassing zone.
So I left Tufts and got my degree, which was great, and then I left Tufts to stay home because we had a son. So Becky and Ben, and then when he started to go back to school, I went back to the Ecotarium, which was the Worcester Science Center back in the 70s, and now I was a certified veterinary technician, so I really enjoyed working there. I worked there for 19 years, and so my job was mainly to teach us, these are all zookeepers, how to catch the barn owl with a net, and then how to hold them. We put the hood on so the bird can't see us. They usually fit pretty good on the birds, they can't see. And then we don't touch the bottom of the feet of the animal because we don't want to put if there is any sore or infection, we don't want to put our resistant, 99%, sterile, to wash your hands with, Purell. You're putting that bacteria-resistant bugs into a wound, and then you can't treat it because it's a resistant bug and it doesn't respond to antibiotics. So we touch the talons, and I'm teaching them that. Don't put your hands all over the feet. Check the keel to make sure they're in good flesh. We'll weigh them. We'll clip the talons to make sure that they don't punch in their own feet, because this bird was 12 years old at this time, this barn owl. And we still, this is Kenda. So this is Ursula and Major's daughter, Kenda. She's 27 years old in this picture. We're doing a physical exam because she was older. She was starting to slow down. We took blood, urine, and so forth. And they noticed how they have to really watch the eyes to see if they're moving. So instead of putting the towel over the head, they block the ears so she can't hear. So that's, just little techniques that they do. The monitors, heart rate and pulse, and this is the anesthesia going into the bear. And the great thing was, I love Billy because he always helped us out. For the last 2 or 3 times we did knock out Kenda, he was the person that did the dart because he'd worked with the bears and the moose, so he knew how much to give, even though you had to guesstimate how much Kenda weighed, to make sure you didn't give too much or too little. And what is it, Lieutenant?
At the time, it was Sergeant Tony Kabir of the Mass Environmental Police, and he was there for public safety. Just in case something went wrong, he would be able to react and protect the public.
Because the door had to stay open for the doctors to go in and out of the den.
So after I immobilized the bear, I was on public safety duty with Tony until the vet said, we need extra help in here. We're trying to slide the bear up onto this platform scale. We can't do it. We need more help. So I secured my shotgun with Tony. I went inside the den. I'm pulling the bear up onto the scale as the vet students are pushing. And then I find myself in the back corner of the den with the bear in front of me and the door way over there. So I got Tony's attention, who's standing in the door. I said, Tony, if the bear wakes up, shoot me first.
Because she would kill anyone. She's a bear. And you had perks too. We raised a lot of little animals again. And this is Slidell, the otter. And he was a baby, a little pup at the time. And so there were 3 of us girls, women, that were taking him home nights, taking turns taking him home, so we all weren't staying up all night. And he ate at 8 o'clock at night. Then you put him to bed in his little kennel with his little like a little teddy bear, a little otter baby, stuffed bear. I'm getting confused. And anyway, and then you'd have to feed him at 12 o'clock and then at 4 o'clock, and then give him a bath in the morning before you brought him back to the ecotarium take care of him during the day. Well, I had raised 2 kids. I knew what was going on. Those 2 ladies had no idea what they were in for. They had to get up at 10 o'clock and at 2 o'clock and at 4 o'clock, and they were not happy people in the morning when they brought Slidell back, because they just weren't used to feeding in the middle of the night. And that's our dog. We were told, don't let him get near the otter, you know, just for diseases and so forth. But my daughter walked in the door, and there comes Dylan, right up there. What the heck is this? So that's the picture on we have a little picture of this in our bathroom so people can see what else spend time in the bathtub. And then Tusk would call. Every once in a while, I'd get a call from Tusk. This is an eagle, a first-year bird, brown eyes, brown, mostly brown. Look at the big feet. He's only about 13 weeks old. He's got his bands on, so they knew what nest he came out of. He had a broken leg, so they pinned the leg. Everything's going great, but he would not eat. So what they have to do is every day they have to put a sheet, catch him. He's squirming. You got to put something over his head so he can't see, like a hood, and then get his feet and then hold on to him like this. That's very stressful when you're trying to heal from a fracture. You need all your strength. You don't want to have things that are making you, you know, not up to snuff as far as being healthy and feeling good. So I just went in there, and I had a wing that my daughter had, a black wing that she used for Halloween, and I put it over. I would just go like this in the cage, because he had been 3 days of being grabbed twice a day to get meds in him with his food. So I just, he opened the door and he's like this. I just started going like that with the wing, the feathered wing, and then let him think he's back in the nest, like the mother's wing is over him. And then what you do is you don't feed like this, because he's like that. So what you do, I told Stephanie, okay, what you're going to do is you're going to have the food right there. The medication is in it, so feed the one that has the medication in first, in case she doesn't want to eat a lot. And you just touch right here. Well, when they touch like that, they're going to go, so there's the food. You got the food on the end, you touch there, they go to bite, you just put the food in the mouth, go down like that, and it eats. And she was like, and she did it again and again, and she had that bird eating within 2.5 days, instead of grabbing it twice a day to get medication into them. So it's little things like that you just want to, I always tell people, I'm not teaching you what I know, I'm teaching you what I was taught. And I always say it that way, so they realize that I had to learn, and I learned from good people, and I learned to try by trial and error too, like the porcupines. So, and then we had to come out of retirement, and so I told you Liberty and Justice were the eagles when I was there. But within a year, both of them passed. So they got 2 new eagles from Florida. Somebody's from Florida. Somebody was working down in Florida, I think. We'll mention it to it. But anyway, these 2 birds were from Florida, non-releasable birds. They could not fly well enough to be released. So the female, about a week after, I got a text, Diane, guess what? We had a contest, and we had your name in Quabin as a name for the eagle, in an eagle contest, and they named it Diane with 2 N's. And I said, wow, I can't believe that's so nice. So I never told Billy, when we went, they had to go for their annual physical. The zookeepers are trying to work nice with the eagles, give them some food, step back, never catch them or do anything bad. So my job was always to catch the animals, so they always looked at me, and most of them didn't like it because I had to catch them to work with, medically with them. So I said to Billy, this bird's name is Diane. And he said, oh, that means the male is Bill. And I went, no, it's Bob. So that was it.
I have feelings, you know.
So one of the last slides we have is, so we had to bring him in, so everybody, we all know what our job is to do. My job was to teach this girl who had only taken blood once from a chicken. And she asked me after I took blood from the first chick, this is our Diane, when we did Bob first. So I took blood from Bob. And then she asked me, could I do it? And I said, here you go, you can do it. Just, and I just said, be careful with this, make sure you do that, blah, blah, blah. And so, one person is holding the wings in so he's not struggling. We have a hood on. Billy's holding the feet. The other girl in the middle is with the blonde hair. She's holding the wings so it doesn't move. So the bird is nice and calm and relaxed, and she just did a beautiful job. And so you wonder, how many hands does it take to hold the bald eagle down? 10. There's 10, and you can see the blood. She did a great job. You can see the blood in the syringe up there. I'm holding it off, and she's doing that.
What about this blood?
Oh my
See
God.
this blood? I was holding one of the birds.
The
and
male.
These are smaller Florida birds, so the hoods that are normally used are a little too big. So the bird I'm holding can see under the hood and decides to just start taking chunks of my finger out with its beak.
And I hear ow,
I'm just sitting there going, ow, ow,
And
ow.
we're working on the other bird, so nobody's listening to him.
Nobody does anyway. Somebody finally came over and got that hood back on where the bird couldn't see.
That's right. You poor baby.
Thank you.
And our kids, of course, they have to be involved. This is Becky when she was 6 in kindergarten. We had to take the bear home one day, so she got to bottle feed it for the night, and it slept in a little crate next to her bed. And our son was probably 15 years old when the golf.
That's a fledgling or young great horned owl that came out of the nest prematurely at Wachusett Country Club in West Boylston. Needed a little nourishment and a little hydration, so we brought it home. Since it came from a golf course and we were going to give it a second chance, we named it Mulligan because that was a nice golf.
I went right over my head.
So we took him back to the country club, and the greenskeeper had a nice scissor lift for us to get back up to the nest, because the nest was in a pine tree next to a fairway. So we're getting the bird out of the truck, and the operator of the scissor lift starts going up. And I said, "Where are you going?" He says, "Well, I'm going to check the height." And he's going up and up and up, and I said, "Well, that mother great horned owl is one of the few birds that will attack a human in defense of the nest." Down comes the scissor lift. So I hopped on board with a stick, and we took Mulligan, and she was looking at us with the intensity of that earlier great horned owl slide that Diane put up. And when I got from me to Diane away from that bird, she bailed out the backside of the nest. So they are that aggressive and that defensive.
Yep. And what are they doing now? Becky works at Trader Joe's in Foxborough as their artist. So she does, and when she has to draw pictures of animals, she always texts me and says, "Okay, Mom, now what's wrong with this picture?" Because she had to draw the goat,
Greatest
Grady.
of all time.
Yes. Put talons on an eagle, because the first time one of them, they were playing the Eagles, right? And so, and I said, well, and the other one was the Falcons. They played the Falcons. So I said, well, the falcon has to have a notch in its beak, because that's how it kills its prey. And she goes, I knew there was something wrong, but now I just kind of say, oh yeah, it's fine. I don't say anything.
So she's an artist, our son is an accountant, go figure.
An accountant! But he's making a lot of money. And this is our grandson, Cyrus Orion Lazowski. And so he's going to have to live up to that name. But we taught him at a young age just to be careful, even if it's not real, with our dog and our cat, and just, you know, just not to bang it around like this. But he always, I don't know what it was about this eagle, but of course he's too young to understand what we were doing. But he always walked around with it like this. So we talk to people and kids. It's habitat. It's land protection. I volunteer at the Greater Worcester Land Trust because he volunteers here. Every Monday he leaves for 3 hours and he mows over there.
The chestnut orchard.
For 3 hours. So, but anyway, we just want to make sure that there's land and property and environment that these kids can grow up and hopefully appreciate, like we've been trying to do in the past 20 years with the ecology movement. And because we want him to grow up and be able to do things and appreciate what's around him. These are 2 10-week-old babies. That's how big they are at 10 weeks of age, bald eagles. So he feels comfortable around them. He's seen 3 or 4 releases, and he's been to 2 or 3 nests. And so he has an appreciation at a young age. And we hope to do that to bring this appreciation to other kids too. So thanks so much.
Lake Shirley in Lunenburg that we were talking about. And it's amazing the success that we've had. More than 80 nesting pairs in the state now, more than 600 chicks produced in the wild. So the bald eagle is back, and they're so resilient and so adaptable. We have them here at Wachusett Reservoir, Lake Quinsigamond, the Blackstone River, the Nashua River, the Merrimack River.
And now on the Cape for the first time.
And on the Cape, so they are back.
Yep. So thank you so much for inviting me to speak today, and my sidekick over here.
Putting
making
up
sure.
with me, yeah.
nesting on the Charles River?
There
Yes.
are, in Waltham, there's a cemetery right next to the Charles,
And
Yes.
in Medway.
and Medway as well.
Yeah, in fact, a juvenile came up, I live right along the river, just came up and visited me last year for.
Wow.
Very nice.
Isn't it awesome?
Very nice.
People say, oh, you guys must be so sick of bald eagles. No. We had a bald eagle fly over our house 2 days ago, and it's just like,
It's so beautiful.
so unbelievable.
Yeah, we have a Friends of Medway Facebook page, and people are posting, little photographs.
Nice, nice. One more maybe?
Yeah, is that how much the egg weighs, that replica? Is that how much you...
That would be weigh a little bit more, wouldn't you think?
Okay.
Right, it is a little heavier than a wild one.
Yeah.
And my other question is, do the peregrine falcon chicks grow up to be fully functional in the wild from when they're raised in the city?
They're raised by other falcons, remember?
Right?
Now the population is self-sustaining. The first ones that were raised on the McCormick building in downtown Boston, they fledged and they did acquire the necessary hunting skills to become top-of-the-line predators.
Every once in a while, one will come into tufts that hit a building, going around inside, and there's another building.
Yeah.
So,
How long does it take to fledge these birds?
The eagles in the wild will typically fledge between 10 and 12 weeks of age. We usually held them in the tower at Quabin until that full 12-week term to make sure they've gotten all the exercise they could within the cages. So they're full grown and fully functional at 12 weeks.
Yep.
How long does it take to get the white head?
That's a 5-year process, an annual molt. They can pair off, become territorial as early as age 3 or 4, but they're typically not sexually mature until 5.
the picture of, who has the book? You have the book? The picture on the cover is Marjorie, the first one that ever nested in Massachusetts. So, yeah, she was 12 weeks, so she nested at, she was 4 years old, nesting with,
They set up a territory in 88 and had eggs in 89.
yep.
So she was.
And she had triplets a couple times, yep, so.